You're listening to Beyond Bitcoin. It's the 27th of January. I'm Arthur Falls, and this is, of course, not investment advice. This episode has been sitting in the bank for quite a while due to a scheduling error on my part that left it in limbo while I was off the grid at Kiwiburn, New Zealand's Burning Man equivalent. Amazing, by the way. So please excuse the belated release. While I was away, I received an email from Manfred Correa, the founder of BitSquare, explaining that after what at my count must have been 9 months unpaid development, his team was rattling the last coins in their jar. The reason I take time to bring this up is that the problem BitSquare addresses, decentralized Bitcoin to fiat exchange, is currently unsolved. The best we have is local Bitcoins, which, as functional as it is, leaves much to be desired. The arbitration infrastructure of BitSquare means the creation of more non-technical jobs in the crypto economy for people like you and myself, as well as a way for people anywhere to access anonymous currency in a safe and easy manner. Episode 9 featured the project, which is a fantastic example of how the DAC model can improve a simple process of exchange. If you have enjoyed Beyond Bitcoin, if you share the vision of a world where we are free to exchange value without the oversight of some arbitrary authority, donate to BitSquare. I've held virtually all donations to Beyond Bitcoin at a single address. All funds from that address will go to fund the BitSquare project. Chris Mountford is a developer at Atlassian, a software company based in Australia. We had a really great discussion at the Bitcoin South conference regarding systems for recording interactions, reputation, and personal information, which we resume for the content of this episode. Chris's focus on the concrete attributes we should desire in what, for the sake of ease, we will call an identity system, make his analysis of the problem both fresh and elucidating. I know I said that the last episode was the second to last. It looks like there'll be at least 2 more after this one. So for those eagerly awaiting the end, you're out of luck.
My name's Chris Mountford. I'm a software developer at Atlassian, which is an Australian company. I work in Sydney, in Australia. And I came to Bitcoin and became obsessed with Bitcoin over a fairly long period of time. I was aware of it probably around 2010, and I kind of kept hearing about it. And I didn't really follow it up because I'd been hearing about these cryptocurrencies for actually about 20 years. I remember DigiCash and the various first sort of, I think there was another thing called Technocash or something, but I can't really find any references to that anymore. In the early internet days of about, I guess it was about 92 or 93 or something like that. And I was really obsessed with the internet then. And when I first heard about digital cryptographic-based money, I thought, awesome, this is going to be great. This is yet another thing that the internet world and computers in general are going to make into a sort of a revolutionary sort of change as a part of this whole revolution in communications and information that was happening at the time. But it seemed that it never really came to fruition, and the projects were shut down, or it just seemed to be maybe, I guess my conclusion at the time, and this is what made me, I think, especially skeptical of Bitcoin when I heard of it. I just thought that the cypherpunk ethos was too extreme. The idea that cryptography is a tool for social change, or that it is, it's better living through cryptography, if you like, was a little bit unrealistic, and that cryptography was really important, and PGP and then the various other tools that came out around that time really important, or at least really high in potential for individual privacy. And there's certainly been a lot of that has come through the internet, digital signatures and things. But I'd never really seen a successful digital currency. Commerce on the internet, which was something people thought would never take off, and who in their right mind would ever put their credit card number into a computer. that whole problem just seemed to go away. And so when I saw Bitcoin, I thought, oh yeah, this is another one of those, and maybe I would hope it would work, but it didn't really hold my breath. And then after a while, I think it's about 2012, I had a closer look and I thought, oh, actually, this is a really nice design and it's actually got some traction. And when I started to see, I think it was the Silk Road and WikiLeaks, that sort of stuff happen, I started to see how, well, now that they've got some powerful enemies, we'll see. And they stood up to them. And that's, for me, that's the real test of a technology, is if it can survive in that highly political and highly, sort of war battle-like scenario of pissing powerful people off, like Tor has and like torrents have. If it can survive in that scenario, then it's stood some sort of test of robustness, and that's really when I started to take notice of it and eventually bought some. And then now I'm totally obsessed with it.
And how did that tie in with the work you were doing at Altessian and Atlassian? Pardon me.
Not at all, really. Originally, since I suppose over the last year, I've been working in identity systems at Atlassian, and it ties in one way. It's software. Atlassian is a software company. Our traditional market is other teams that make software. So we sell software to people who make software so that they can make software. That sort of thing. So it's a very engineering centric and I guess an optimistic kind of engineering culture. So that's the first sort of level of how it ties in. But then also my kind of shadow brief, if you like, at Atlassian was security. This is an area I've always been interested in. And I've been at the company so long. When I started, it was just a small company. There were, I think, 20-something people in Sydney, and the first US office had been opened. And so I was kind of like the guy who was most interested in security until we finally got dedicated specialists for that sort of thing. And so I think there's a certain tie-in there. And the identity thing, I think, ties into it as well, because I see, and we can talk about this a lot more if you like, but I see in Bitcoin and the blockchain technologies, I see a real potential solution for identity systems or name systems, and including in that various other adjacent areas like authorization, authentication, that sort of thing. I can see some solutions there. And having worked for the last year on a sort of internal identity system where it's single sign-on and multiple systems that need to agree about who people are and what they're permitted to see and that sort of stuff, I can see how this is a fundamental feature of the whole Bitcoin universe that really is still missing. It's not there. I mean, we can see it most clearly when we have to use Bitcoin addresses and the equivalent in all of the other different blockchain technologies instead of using names that we're more familiar with. So that's a tie-in as well. There's one more if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Atlassian's sort of first product that they started with, and the one that I've worked on most, is a bug tracker, if you like, or a sort of a task tracker, or project management tool called Jira. And it's really just a big database to track and manage all of the things that you need to do. And it has quite a big open source community who use it. So, Apache and various other high profile open source projects use it, and we give it away for free to those sorts of projects. And so I thought that the whole bug bounty idea was a pretty interesting use of Bitcoin. You could, if you were a user of open source software, which most people really are, you could say, look, I really want this bug fixed, or I want this new feature, and I'm prepared to pay. And this idea is in pretty much all of the cryptocurrency projects, which are almost universally open source projects themselves. And the idea of posting money on a work item and offering that money to whoever will do that work, that's pretty much that's a sort of key feature of how we could get this. How people who are not developers themselves can drive the progress of the technology. How people who are developers can monetize their efforts, which in open source projects hasn't really happened, I suppose, enough. And so I wrote a plugin for Jira. It's got an extension system, and this is widely used by people. And that was just to add Bitcoin capability to tasks and work items. And so you can add to a bounty. You can sort the tasks by bounty, or how many Bitcoins people have posted on them. And then the administrator of that system can say how that workflow will work. They don't necessarily say that the user will definitely, the developer will definitely get 100% of that bounty, although that's the most obvious case. They could say, oh yeah, and 1% goes to the server, or 5% or 10% goes to charity, or whatever, or to the EFF or something. So it wasn't that I was saying, yeah, this is just a bug bounty system, but because Jira has this plugin system, I made it such that you could transfer balances as a workflow step, and in Jira you can design that to be whatever kind of workflow you want. So that's a bit of a complicated explanation of it, but yeah, a bug bounty system, if you're familiar with that, that's pretty much the sort of starting point. But it can work a bit like Kickstarter if you want as well.
Just before we were talking about identity systems, and it seems like Jira is like there's a definite need for a strong identity system in a piece of software like Jira, where you're actually examining relationships and logging and logging events.
Well, there could certainly be, if you're talking about open source systems like Bitcoin and these high, I guess you'd call them high trust kind of software. We can get into that, but the direct relationship between the identity systems that I'm working on at Atlassian and Jira is quite pedestrian. It's really just that this is one application amidst a growing array of groupware, or let's to use an old term, collaboration software for teams. And when Atlassian buys a new company, and those sort of features and those options for different, we've got chat applications and a wiki, various things like that. When we want them to all work and interoperate seamlessly, we obviously need to have people's identity work across all of those systems. So that's the basic kind of need for an identity system there. And you can see the exact same thing exists in Apple, in Google, in Facebook. They have a large number of people working on all of these different parts, and those parts combine. And you shouldn't need to separately log into all of the different things that Google runs. You should be able to log in once and then use all of them as that same individual. So Google has identity systems, Facebook and Twitter, and in some ways, these services, these public services, have become identity systems. You can log in with your Facebook, to other sites, to third-party sites. Same with Google, same with Twitter. And that's where we're really starting to get into an interesting world, because, yeah, we need to collaborate, and these various applications need to interoperate. And so they need to be able to get away from that horrible balkanized world where you have to create an account on every separate app that you use. And then you go, yeah, this is my name, Chris Mountford, and, think of a new password and remember them all. Or, you should be using a password manager for that these days. But, you need to separately manage your accounts on all of these different systems. Well, what we obviously need is unified identity systems that reduce the need for us to separately create all those. And we really can't have a world where everyone's identity is run by a couple of big companies. I think that's quite a dangerous possibility. Like whether it's Google or Facebook or anyone else, we have to have the internet of identity.
And so that's what really brings us to the next question, which is, what does that internet of identity look like?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and you and I were talking about this earlier. Actually, I think actually it'd be a good moment to reflect on that podcast, that episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin that Andreas Antonopoulos and Chris Ellis did about, I think it was called The Philosophy of Identity.
Episode 160.
Right, awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, that one I really loved, although there was a couple of moments in there where I was standing on my chair and saying, hey, I disagree, and I think it was the moment when they were talking about identity systems, and I think it was Andreas was saying something along the lines of, but you have to watch out for, or we have to be vigilant against the potential reduction of identity into a sort of a simple star system where people vouch for each other in this way and say, oh, thumbs up for Arthur and, thumbs down for Chris, and your rank gets, higher than mine or whatever. And that's the sum total of a human's value, in that they've got some numeric quantity that goes with their name, and that's the end of it. And I think that certainly is a horrible thought. I think that if we have that, as you can see, there are those sorts of reputation systems, I would call them, in various sites. You've got, I think the Q&A sites are particularly, prone to have this. But I think the way that an identity system should work, and hopefully we're not using a term here, identity system, which is loaded with too much baggage. I suspect it might be.
With a term like identity system, it's so broad that I think there's I think there's an implication that that what we're talking about is not specific, and it's
yeah. Well, you were actually we were chatting earlier, and a couple of the points you made me recognize that actually identity is probably really not the right word to use here, because it is too ambiguous. And when I'm talking about identity systems, I think most of the time I'm really focusing on name registration and having some form of, in Bitcoin it would be called an address, but the concept is like a public key. So the idea is it's a unique identifier, but it doesn't have to be a single unique identifier. You could have multiple of these, and just like you have an alias on the Bitcoin Talk forums and the various other forums you might be on, and that's a unique username or a numeric username. Just as you have that, you would have potentially in this utopian identity system, you would have identifiers that are unique to you globally, so not just on that forum. And then that's not enough, because you can already have your own key pairs. Developers use this all the time. You use your keys. Actually, this is a good point. You might use your keys to authenticate yourself with, these sites like GitHub. GitHub's sort of a code repository where developers can collaborate on their code. That's a sort of a popular place for people to collaborate on open source. And I should probably mention, this is you can cut this out. It's probably classified as an ad. But my company also has one called Bitbucket, which is, it competes with GitHub, virtually the same sort of a category of product. So the concept is that you have a unique identifier, and you can use that unique identifier to identify yourself to the things you currently use and the things that you will use next. And then those just like Facebook, using your Facebook to log in or using Google to log in. However, there's not a single company behind this identity. It's a blockchain, and depending on how broad you want to go, there could be a lot of other stuff that connects with that identity. and that can include reputation systems, which might be, yes, I vouch for Arthur. He's a great tree climber, or he's a mean motocross rider. Something, I don't know.
We've got these rudimentary identity systems already for use in what you were talking about, Bitbucket and GitHub.
Oh, right. So about that, yes. The reason I mentioned them, I only just thought of it at that time. Those are two services, and there are probably plenty of others, but developer services are a little bit of, they can be a little window into the future of what everyone else will be using, muggles, if you like, will be using in the future when things become easier to use and when it's all proven. And that is that you use the standard style key pairs. So just as the what's called public key infrastructure, or PKI, the public key and private key pair, that's the basis of the digital signature system behind Bitcoin and pretty much all of the altcoins. This system has been in use for authorization, which means access control, to various services on the internet for a long time. So if you are contributing to a software project, then your ability to send code, so new work that you've done or changes to the existing code, you don't necessarily have to type your password every time you want to send that code in. And if you've ever seen any hacker movies, you know that we use those horrendously complex looking green screen type setups with the text all over it, the terminal type stuff. And so if you're sitting at the command line, that's all just smoke and mirrors mystique stuff, of course. No. So you're using the command line and you can type, git, blah, blah, blah. You're using the tools of the developer. You can send your code changes, or push them, as it's called in Git terminology. You push them to a server, and that is an authenticated data submission. And you don't type your password typically, often. And that's because it's done using private and public key pairs. So when I make a connection, that connection is authenticated using public key infrastructure, the cryptography of those keys. And if someone else has access to my computer, and if I don't have passphrases on my keys, this is the password aspect creeping back in, if I don't have that, then someone can impersonate me.
So given this landscape, we've established that there's a need for a way to secure information, attach it to an identity, and record that identity's, and again, I know we're using, identity is far too broad a term.
Yeah, you can use the word identifier. I was just thinking that before. It's a unique number or address or a key, public key.
Okay, so we need a way,
or a name,
yeah. So we need a way of attaching information and a record of a history of interactions to an identifier that an individual can then associate with themselves in order to interact in a secure, but at the same time, open way with a history of interactions and a reputation.
Yeah, usually you do. This is where I think we need to be careful to not assume that a reputation system is always connected with an identity or an identifier system having identifiers. So let's imagine the case where I've created a new account on a service. So everyone knows what email's like. You've got Gmail or whatever. But with Gmail, you send your password across the wire to Google, and then Google take the password, and without having stored your password, they verify that password is the right one. There's a whole set of problems that go with that way of interacting. However, what you have with them is an account that is independent of any external identity. So you've said that your name is Arthur Falls and Arthur S. Falls, and because there could be someone else. You've said that's your name, and then you're coming back and you're presenting those same credentials, and they're verifying those credentials are you. Now, they still provide you email service, even if you are a terrible tree climber or motorbike rider. Your reputation in those specific areas or in any area isn't relevant to whether or not they know that you are the same person or that you're presenting credentials that were presented when you first signed up for the account. So what they have is, and this is where I say this is what your identity is as opposed to your reputation. What they have is some defensible expectation that you're the same person as the person who signed up for the account. Right. Now, there's obviously ways that could fail. You could be, hacked or stuff like that. But that's independent of what your reputation is. And what your reputation is will be attached to an identity. So your email address on Gmail, say, you start sending emails around, and then people sort of, maybe they don't like what you have to say, or they do. Maybe they think you're a fantastic podcaster, and then they want to recommend you. They say, look, you got to really listen to this Arthur Falls guy. He's awesome. His Beyond Bitcoin podcast is the best. Now that's where reputation comes in. So I might use your name because there's no other Bitcoin Arthur Falls. In my address book, you're the Arthur Falls. I don't need anything much more than your name. I need mechanisms to reach you, like your Skype address and your email and whatever. But as long as I've got your name, and if somebody says, hey, you know that guy, and they say Arthur Falls and they say Bitcoin, I'll be like, yeah, I know that guy. He's a cool guy. So there's identity, there's the recognition and the disambiguation, if you like, the way to distinguish one person or one persona from another. So I know who you are by what you've done because those things help uniquely identify you. I've got a couple of Twitter accounts. This is another good example. I've got my first Twitter account was me, the professional software developer, talking about mostly software stuff, but like Twitter, it was a bit of everything. But when I started getting really obsessed with Bitcoin, I thought, I better let all these software people who are not into Bitcoin off the hook here and not bombard them with Bitcoin stuff. And I created a separate Twitter account and, subsequent domain name, and I created a blog and various other stuff. And that identity is called Block Zombie. So if anyone's listening to this and they're interested in following me on Twitter, follow me as Block Zombie because that's my Twitter identity. And I mention this not to get more followers on Twitter, although that's cool because then your reputation grows. But because this is a way to illustrate what identity and reputation really are. Reputation, I think, it can be mixed up with a simple star system, but it's also, I guess I'd like to say, domain specific. It's about a subject matter. It's normally when someone vouches for someone else, they should qualify what they're saying and to say, is this person, a nice guy? That doesn't mean that you're saying that they're a good doctor or something. They might be a doctor, but maybe you're not qualified to say how good a doctor they are. And maybe you're actually a medical practitioner and you're absolutely qualified to say how good a doctor they are, but you're not assessing whether or not they're a nice guy. So reputation, I think, should be always qualified claims about another identity. So people might say, yeah, Block Zombie, great stuff about the software or technical aspects of blockchain technology, but not much of a well-informed Austrian economist, which is probably fair.
Domain specificity is key there, isn't it?
I think so. Well, it's a qualifier. It's like saying, rather than just a star system, which is a linear, really clumsy. I mean, stars is great for. Actually, it's not really. To be honest, I don't think it's much good for anything other than, hotels. It's just too simplistic. we were talking before. My example is music, or movies, or something like that. People make recommendations to each other. Has anyone ever come to you and said, "Oh, Arthur, you'll love this. Check this out. It's this music, or this movie, or this book."
All the time, yeah, and then you're stuck like, yeah, well, maybe. I'm sure it's good.
Yeah. So if it's someone who knows you, well, maybe what they've done is they've said, well, Arthur likes this sort of thing. He just loves science fiction or whatever. At least that's qualified to some subset of all potential books or all potential movies. Because if someone says this is really great and they don't know me at all, well, what does that mean? Great. Let's say great music. People will recommend music. Oh, you'll love this. And I'm not sure what that means, because if they don't know me at all, then what they most likely mean is, I really love this. They like it. And that's not even useful if I don't know them, So it needs to be qualified. This star system it's something, but it's not much. So what you want to say in any identity system, the relationships between identities, which is what we're really talking about here, bring it back to identity and blockchain type technology, the sorts of things that can be implemented in software. You want to be able to have an identity system where, and actually for any software developers who know about JWT, it's a JSON web tokens. This is sort of a system or a standard for making connections between identities. So an identity can be a thing that is an identifier. So let's just say identifier. So an identifier, just for our conversation, it can just be our names, right? So Chris Mountford, Arthur S. Falls, we know who we're talking about. That's enough identity for anything, as long as you can be unambiguous. And then we're making, in JWT, what happens is you make specific claims. So this is what I've been saying, about the medical credentials or the motorcycle riding capability or whatever. There's a narrow, typically a very narrow claim made. I'm saying you're a great tree climber. So my ability to quantify tree climbing ability is then conferred onto you. And so anyone who knows my ability to determine good tree climbing, it might be mediocre or it might be good. That ability of mine, my reputation in determining tree climbing ability. I mention this because I think I heard once that you're a arborist, or you literally swing from trees. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I am an arborist. Although I'm about to resign. Go into horticulture.
All right. See, totally different thing, right?
Yeah, actually, pretty much.
Yeah, no, see, I don't doubt that. It's just that, my knowledge in that area is nowhere near, I'm guessing, nowhere near as broad as yours. So just my clumsy sort of approach to that would be, that sounds like it's in the same quadrant of life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, certainly similar quadrant.
Yeah. So this isn't just this very conversation is another example of just qualifying claims, making a claim from Chris Mountford to Arthur Falls about a thing where the reputation I have amongst whoever cares is conferred, or there's a transaction, if you like a value transaction in Bitcoin. There's a transaction between me and you on a topic. And JWT is just a sort of a format or a mechanism for implementation, for actually writing in software claims about entities from other entities. And I think that this is a useful part of the future identity system that I hope we can, as a community, develop together. And I've been doing a little bit of research about this, but I'm not really in a position to sort of say exactly which of the potential competing systems is going to succeed or be the best. But I'm increasingly clear about what we really want from this.
Do we need a way to quantify a person's competence or a person's ability to confer reputation? Is there a way to do it? And do we need to do that? Do we need to find a way to granularize the transaction of reputation that you describe?
Yes and no. I think we don't need to unless we need to. In some ways, that's what it comes down to. If we're talking about specific capabilities, there might be a numeric scale, like there is with most schooling, and most certification. They quantify abilities, and presumably that's useful to do. I'm not saying that quantifying claims, reputation or capability claims are useless. I'm just saying that there's no need for us to fear that all identity systems inexorably lead to a dumb, numeric, quantified reputation system. Because if you look at the identity and reputation systems that we have in modern societies, they don't simply come down to numeric quantities. And so no digital version or ideal digital version would hopefully suffer from that. Now, certainly it's a failure case. It's something that could happen, and it's just like any other dystopia. I agree, it's not what we want. But and actually, I'm very critical of some of the overly quantitative processes that are used for certification and in education, in school education. I think that some of those are suboptimal. We really, what we want to do is maximize people's capabilities and round them out to some set that they are going to need in their life, if that's the goal. Education is the goal, or to adopt a multi-dimensional or a sort of multivariate view of what capability is. So you might be a great, look, we keep coming back to some of these same examples. You might be a great doctor. Look, this is a problem. Here's a great example of a problem that we've seen in education, certainly in a lot of the Western countries. What's happened in medicine is a high status profession. Doctors, especially surgeons and specialists, and it's not brain surgery because like brain surgery is right up there with rocket science as being the pinnacle capability, and that's a reputation. I'm not saying it's undeserved. I'm just saying it is that way. And so, in most of my experiences in Australia, and I'm assuming that it kind of works the same in New Zealand and the US and most of the places where many of your listeners are from. And so, therefore, if you want to become a doctor, then you have to compete in school against a lot of other people who are, presumably all competing against each other. Maybe not for being a doctor, but for being something. And school often comes down to a single numerical quantity. In that will determine your entrance to university or your right to enter university or the offers that you'll be given to attend or to be given scholarships and various other things. And I think they do certainly attempt to incorporate not just your mark. They interview candidates and look for qualities that aren't being measured by the school exam system, which of course is merely the ability to score high on an exam. That's what's being measured. And then the result seems to be potentially a problem of the people who are going into medicine. In Australia, a lot of the people who are going into medicine, this is a sense that people have, people who have scored high on mathematics and science and stuff, which, those things are, I think that's great in some areas. I think we need to have more maths and science and engineering, education. But to quantify or to determine who should be a doctor by that alone isn't ideal, because a lot of what being an actual doctor is about is dealing with people. And there are people skills that are not being quantified or not being weighted in the sort of quantification system that is in schools. They're not being weighted to select ideally for being a doctor. And you could say the exact same thing about being a lawyer as well, which is another one of those professions that has a high, what's it called in the US, a grade point average or whatever. So your question was, should we not have, or is there a role for quantification of people's reputation? And I'd say, yeah, there is a role for that. It's sometimes simplification that's convenient and you don't lose too much. If you're talking about a movie or a hotel or something,
Hello, I'm Matt608 and I'm campaigning to be elected as a marketing delegate for BitShares. I'll be focusing on bringing BitUSD to the Argentine market where it is needed most, giving people access to a stable currency through a safe and bank-free solution. I'll be developing a custom BitUSD portal for Spanish speakers and launching an advertising campaign to promote the portal. To view the rest of my campaign details, visit bitsharestalk.org and look in the delegate subforum. My delegate is called Argentina-marketing.mat608. Please vote for me if you support my campaign. Thank you.
Well, I think let's talk about some practical examples. I think one of the things in Bitcoin, which is right at the forefront of concern for a lot of people, is regulation. And to me, it seems to split into two main camps. Regulation for consumer protection, and I don't know anyone who's against this in principle. The idea that if somebody else is minding your money, then they need to be held account for that. They perhaps need to follow some procedures and maybe take some steps, and maybe have insurance and capital backing and whatever else. They need to do stuff in order to reduce the risk of losing money that belongs to other people, and they also need to have mechanisms to respond if that is necessary. So those things are defined in regulation. Let's just put them aside. But the rest of regulation seems to be focused basically on identity. It's KYC, know your customer. And you can see in the language here who they're talking to. Your, the Y in KYC, your customer, that's talking from regulators to financial institutions. So what they're saying is that it's the financial institution's responsibility to know the identity of the customer, whoever is making transactions. And the customer is presumably the one who's basically footing the bill here. So the customer is paying for a service, and the regulator is conferring a responsibility on the service provider, the financial company, the financial institution, to do some stuff because it's really important that they do that. And obviously, everyone knows the reason why, or the published purpose of this is for stopping various criminal or deterring or enabling crime fighting for various criminal activities, including terrorism. We've seen quite an increase in the amount of or the extent of the regulation, especially coming from the US in the wake of 9/11. So the threat of criminal activity, terrorism, is creating a scenario where it's really important that a service provider knows who is receiving the service. Why is that? Well, the purpose is that they don't want money to go to terrorists, so therefore they need to track everything. They need to know exactly who's transmitting money, and then, of course, the flip side is who's receiving the money. And the reason is because in the case that they then discover that there's some crime being committed, or they form a suspicion that there is, then they want to be able to go and find that person who was doing that. And they can do this at the point where the funding occurs for the terrorism instead of after the act has occurred. So it's a sort of preemptive, and it's also for following up. So this is the whole purpose of it and the goal behind it. But let's look at what really happens. Then what happens is that you need to provide a huge amount of identifying data to a financial institution, every single one that falls into this regulation. And that is exactly the information that's required to impersonate you. By definition, it has to be sufficient to identify you. And since identifying you is the only mechanism that's been used to ensure against your having some involvement in a crime at a later time or even previously, then they need to ensure that they have enough detail to uniquely identify you. And that's metadata, including your mother's maiden name and your address. And then you need photo ID and everything. Like, you need a lot of stuff. And that list is only going, if we continue down that road, that list is only going to increase. Because once everyone's mother's maiden name, cat's name, password, all of this stuff, once this stuff leaks out and is stolen, as it frequently is, or is taken by the bank's employees, or is seized by dozens of government departments and shared around and then leaked into WikiLeaks or whatever, once this information gets out, and it really can't be contained.
I mean, look at Sony. They're getting hammered.
Third time. Yeah, they're leaking like a sieve. So and we need to interact. This is a sort of feature of a modern networked economy. We need to interact with more and more entities. The ownership patterns and the containment and relationships between all of the corporations who own this or that database, that's becoming more complex and more dynamic. So the opportunities for the loss of that information and its spread increases, and the inevitable consequence is that we need to not only provide our mother's maiden name, but our mother's maiden name and a whole more set of stuff that hasn't been leaked. So why mother's maiden name? Well, because that's not easily accessible. Well, yeah, now it is. Thanks a lot. So now that's not enough. So we're going to stop this madness. What we actually want is the opposite. And I think Bitcoin has a fantastic ability to use a technique of just reversing what your expectation might be. And I think this decentralized security model, decentralized security in the decentralized network transactions, the trustless peer-to-peer transactions, is a good example of this. You need to you need the opposite of this. You need to reduce the amount of information you share in order to increase capability to reduce the opportunity for terrorism financing and these other goals. I'm actually quite skeptical of KYC and AML, because I think that it's really a form of total surveillance. It's the equivalent of cameras in your home. It's just cameras in your bank account. And the practicality of that is a whole nother matter. I think it's basically not practical or possible to have a system like that. But it doesn't even matter whether it's impossible, because it's really not a good idea. What we should have instead is a situation of minimal disclosure. So what has to happen in the case of a bank account where someone might, we want to have a world without bank accounts, but let's say there's financial services providers and they want to solve this problem of people might be involved in terrorism and they need to then find that person. Well, who needs to find the person if it turns out that they are involved in a terrorist plot? Well, ultimately the person, presumably a police officer who needs to go and knock on a door or bust down a door or whatever, that's the only person who needs to know the address of the person. Nobody, I guess the only reason to know their name is to acquire from them confirmation that they are that person. So you could actually say, well, what we need is a means to discover someone's, this is the first step, a means to discover someone's address under certain situations, right? No, you don't need the bank employees and the central, the FinCEN, and in Australia it's AUSTRAC, and New Zealand I don't know, but there are these different government bodies who are supposed to receive the reports of suspicious activity and know who's transferring all this money. Those people don't need, those people in those offices don't need to know the address. They don't need to turn up to that address. They don't need to know that. Okay. What they need to be able to do is make a decision about patterns of transactions, and they might need to know whether a party to a transaction is involved in this ongoing investigation, where they have had people knock on doors, and if the person who that suspicious person is transacting with is involved, then they might need to go knock on their door. So at that point, they could say authorize that that those are the parties who are deemed to be suspicious. Their work's done. They've done their analysis. They've said this is something we're following up on. And then someone else might need to, ultimately someone will need to go and find the address, but none of the people in between need to know the address, right? So it's sort of like a blinding. The idea is that, say, I disclose my address for purposes of needing to know my address, which I submit to in a society. Some people would say that these situations should never occur. They might be libertarians, and I'm not going to argue about that. I'm just saying that if you do believe that we should be able to find people's address to follow up in extreme cases of need, like a terrorist plot, then you should be okay with the idea of nobody needing to know that information except the person who actually needs to go to that address when they need to. So they can get permission from judges or do whatever process they do, and only at the last possible moment they need to know the actual address. They need to know that they can discover it. This is the flip side of the authorization and the identity. They need to be able to prove that they are entitled to discover that address, that it is a part of an investigation, that it has been determined without prejudice, without knowing the person's name or ethnicity or anything else, that this is a suspicious transaction, using only the information that they publicly declare is necessary to determine that. They opt into the metadata. They say, I need to know the history of transactions with other entities. And when we say entities, these are, identifiers that don't they don't really identify the individual's name. That doesn't include their mother's maiden name or their cat's name or their ethnicity or whatever. It doesn't include their address unless those things are agreed to be critical to determining whether or not there is a problem here, whether this is a terrorist plot. So whatever they need to determine whether it's a terrorist plot, that's all they get to know. The bank employees who need to determine that the figures add up, they don't need to know anything, just the figures. You with me?
How do all of these things come together? How do you implement a system like this, and how do you verify that information as it's entered into a database?
Yeah, well, those are two very different things. Most verification is solved using the system itself. So but how do you implement this? Well, again, I think it's a series of claims. So when I sign up for a bank account, what I'd be saying is, all right, I'm providing an identifier, which which is unique to me. It may not be my only identifier. It could be, I could have a nickname, I could have a dozen accounts on all these forums or different names, but those are not related to this. This is my bank account identifier, unique to me, just like a number. And then I attach to that signed claims by authorized parties. So here's an example of a signed claim. So my address, I state what my address is, and in the existing system of signing up for a bank account, I think what you need to do is, it's been a while since I actually signed bank account stuff, but I think you have to provide, like a power bill or something with the same address on it. So it sort of confirms that you have that address. So you could have someone sign a proof of address claim. This might be a JP or some person whose role it is, an independent third party whose role it is to make claims about addresses and other similar things by citing the exact same evidence that is currently used today and deemed to be good, by looking at correspondence or other signed claims, which because of this whole system would exist, by saying, all right, so this upstanding member of the community whose role it is to do this full time, say that yes, Arthur Falls, this person holding this key, bears proof that they live at this address because of I have cited these various proofs which are received mail at that address, say, And you can have different service providers providing any of these things, and none of them gets the complete picture. But I don't want to sort of make this too much like a serpent eating its tail, where the system does it all, because you can bootstrap this system using existing processes. So you could have people who you could have a bank account, you can have an email address, you can have addressed mail that you present using their current system, and then have someone sign a claim which says that I've seen that. This person's already proved to me that they have these things at this time. And who am I to say this? Well, here's my set of credentials. Here's my claim to the right to say so. Here's you don't need to know my name, but I have proof that I'm a JP. But you don't necessarily need to know the mother's maiden name of the JP either. You with me? So it's a little self-reflexive, so it's difficult to see, and it's certainly a massive undertaking for this entire system to be built out. But in some ways, it's just like the internet. We need this system. We're going to have this system. It's the only one that makes sense to me. I guess the only concession I'd be willing to make is that we will approximate this to a greater or lesser degree, and this will be, maybe it's a good enough version of this. But the idea is that we already have, it's a web of trust. So if you're familiar with a web of trust, it is where it's a network of parties. They have trust relationships, making claims like motorcycling capabilities. You can do a, backflip or whatever, because I've seen it. And if that turns out not be true, well, that will reflect on me. So they're sort of bidirectional.
That diminishes the weight that, say, that your claim to my ability has, or to someone else's ability in the same field might have.
Exactly. They might say, "Oh, you say that about all the guys, Chris." So, but the way that it works, you were asking about implementations. One example in JWT, which is already deployed across the internet, is that you use digital signatures. So these are ways to ensure that that a claim can't be counterfeited. So someone who makes a claim, that their claim as a JP can't be reproduced as someone who's not a JP, because they have got the JP badge and they've signed using the JP credential. They've combined that with their assertion that this person does receive mail at this address. According to some, you can have a point system. You can have we come back to stars, but the idea of you can have a 1-star address check and a 5-star address check. You can have, I've gone there, I've looked around, I opened their drawers, and there was evidence that they really do, like that they weren't expecting me, and I turned up, and I'm pretty sure that really is that person, and I've checked their birth certificates, and I've looked at their kids, and I asked their kids what who their daddy was and stuff. You can just go as far as you ever want to. And these are exactly these are the extents that we do go to when we need to. The courts, the police investigations, they already use all of these same techniques. What we need to do is just, for every one of those interactions, which are the edges on that network, all of the interactions between the identities, between this police officer, this badge carrying, that's a badge. They have a badge. They've got a piece of pressed metal or whatever it might be. They have a number. They've got a name in a database. There's what you can follow up on all this stuff. Those things all need to be turned digital. That's really all I'm talking about. And it's definitely going to happen. Everything else is digital. And now that we've got digital money, I can see no reason why we can't have this.
Hey, that's awesome that we've got that done, because this identity thing is, I haven't found anyone to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got some knowledge and insights about this that I would love to hear about. My feeling is that we always arrive back at identity whenever you start to build these systems, and I've seen it in BitShares in particular. You keep coming back to, and then somehow we all know who we're dealing with here, and we've got address books or whatever. And address books, yeah, that's a good start. Everyone's got an address book with emails and maybe even Bitcoin addresses in it. But, and Twitter, and they tweet you and say, "Hey, what's your Bitcoin address?" or whatever. You need to have a way to know who you're dealing with. So I can see us always arriving back at the problem of identity. And I had thought that maybe this was harder to monetize than currency. But you were saying that actually it seems that's not true. That actually it can be, because I was thinking of Namecoin, and it's sort of had some, sort of difficulties.
Well, the case I'm thinking of was Nikolai Mashigyan's. It started off as, what was it, BitShares DNS, and then it was .p2p, then it was key ID, and what he had was he had an auction system.
Right. So this is the BitShares style DAC. And what blockchain does that information exist in? And, if I wanted, just theoretically, if I wanted to take someone's name, what would I need to be able to do? And how can we ensure that that's not possible or practical?
Well, you need to actually outbid them initially.
No, I mean, how do I impersonate them? What's the attack? Like, what's the equivalent of the Bitcoin 51% attack, or what are the doomsday scenarios, I guess?
I'm not 100% convinced that many of these ideas, these doomsday scenarios, exist beyond thought experiments. Certainly, if a 51% attack is not.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just love for that to be the conclusion, rather than, well, here's an example for Namecoin. It seems like, especially due to the sort of partial merge mining problem in Namecoin, and you might say the lack of development that we've seen in the project, that Namecoin security is not really, potentially not up to the task. I'm not saying that it is, but this is the sort of sense I get, that the vibe of the people who are looking at it, and my own looking at it, is that it may not be the system for this. So therefore, what was it? It's not that the technology or the idea is a problem, it's that the actual network power and the security in the network is insufficient to make strong guarantees of the kind we want. So let's ask the same set of questions about that BitShares blockchain that it's in.
Well, say presumably it'll be built on the BitShares, using the BitShares toolkit, and all current BitShares delegates will have the necessary tools to actually run a delegate on the key ID network, whatever it is right now. I should know.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So coming back to the monetization and the incentives, do the delegates who make a profit doing this, do they have the same incentive to secure that aspect, the key ID or the name registration aspect, as they do the any other share on that blockchain, because of the agreement about the BitShares, the sort of proto shares and
the whole BitShares chestnut is really difficult to crack, really.
Yeah.
but certainly there's the potential for them to basically implement a dilution, an annual kind of a per block seigniorage, as we used to in Bitcoin, that encourages them to produce valid blocks. And because they have the tools necessary to oust any delegate that produces an invalid block, obviously there's the incentive for the delegates to behave themselves, and that's how the BitShares exchange is secured. And presumably it would be very simple to bootstrap the key ID chain right on top of that one.
Cool. So that means that the whole of BitShares would have to suffer something equally catastrophic in order for this name system to be broken. Is that your assessment?
Absolutely. That would be my my understanding of it. But then also, you're not necessarily tying one to the other. So one could suffer a major catastrophe, and the other may be fine if it doesn't affect, say, the delegate infrastructure or.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, there can be bugs specific to that part of it.
Exactly, and and also presumably the incentives to attack are slightly different in both scenarios. Again, without running.
Well, see, here's the trick, right? Sorry, I interrupted you there, but we don't actually know what with Bitcoin. Often the incentive to attack is widely understood by everyone at once, and that is basically the theoretical maximum loss is the market cap of Bitcoin, right? And maybe you'd add some mining equipment on top of that, but it's instrumented on top of the total market cap of the currency, as it is in relation to another currency, so US dollars, for example. So let's say it's $5 billion for Bitcoin. But what is the potential downside of a loss of control of a name? If it's the US government's name on this blockchain, and this is the sort of scale I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about just, Freddie and Johnny on the forum trading illegal drugs or whatever. I'm talking about the whole, the Internet of Identity, the whole planet's worth of identity being attached to or resting on a cryptographic system that interoperates in exactly the same way as Bitcoin transactions do. And that would mean that the potential, I guess you could add checks and balances, but the potential maximum loss of the identity DAC is actually detached from, well, what is it? The BitShares price, the bit, whatever the.
In their case, it would be a separate token, so presumably the price of key ID stake tokens.
Yeah. Wow. So I guess that could float, and people could say, you know what? There's not enough market cap here for us to, because here's a scenario. I've got a really keen interest in, music, commerce, and distribution. I really feel like this is an area, and I'm not the only one. This is not a new idea either. This is an area where blockchain technology could be a great potential for musicians and for music appreciators. But the idea is, I want to say I'm Sony, and I have Madonna's latest single. I own the copyright to that. I am selling that, and as well as everything else on their books, and they're identifying their claim to the right, the copyright of Madonna's latest single, which is itself. I don't know if Madonna's signed with Sony, but whatever. So, so people know that that's Madonna's latest single, and when they want to buy it, they might be buying it from iTunes or Google Play or whatever. But in this identity system, and with a potentially peer-to-peer digital marketplace for media, you might be buying that single through a mechanism that isn't a sort of centralized and blocked, like access blocked single resource like iTunes and Google Play Store, where they say, hang on, who are you? Are you really Sony? Let's just verify that using the usual ways. And there's a curator there who makes sure that only the real Sony gets in to make this claim. In a decentralized system, you need to be able to enable anyone to come and make a claim that they have the copyright to Madonna's latest single or whatever. But then when people come to buy it, that would be surfaced, that you'd see, Johnny Five's claim to be the copyright holder to Madonna's latest single and Sony's, and then you'll see the relative, weight of those. Again, this would maybe a case where a simple linear reputation system would work, where you could say, for that claim, for the claim to the right, to the exclusive rights for copyright of a piece of music, this identity, let's say that's the same identity as Sony has published on their HTTPS website, that identity has made that claim against this rights relationship, and so has Johnny Five of PirateBay.org. And so who are you going to take? Well, you'd be a total idiot to buy for $1 that single from Johnny, because it looks clear that it's the dodgy one, and if you're going to pirate it, why pay $1? So
yeah.
So your legitimate sales are going to go through the commonly identified identity. So bringing it back to the total damages, well, if that didn't work, well, the amount that Sony risks by saying, all right, yeah, we'll use BitShares, Bit ID or whatever, as our identity, the price or the market cap or whatever it is in the DPoS system that protects, this is proof of stake, right? So Sony's going to have to hold a lot of that stuff and maybe be a delegate or at least to be voting to ensure that the that the system won't fail to
represent their interests.
Yeah, to prove their ownership. Because if it doesn't work, and then because that's what's supposed to stop people from getting the wrong idea and paying the wrong person. You know, that Johnny can't get any more than the guy on the street selling rip-off CDs could get, because everyone who's walking past that guy knows that they're straight off the back of the truck, or they're all pirated, or whatever. People know that those are pirated because they can see the signals. So in a digital version of the same thing, they would see the signals. That's legitimate Sony. This is illegitimate Johnny, and they make their own choice, decentralized. So whatever system ensures against these failures would have to be able to ensure a quantity that is at risk.
The other issue that we have with when we start looking at non-currency uses for blockchains is and that goes along with these security models of mining, delegates, what have you. But let's take mining as a classic example. With Bitcoin, we generally see it as, and it's my view that this is incorrect, that we generally see that there is a potential monetary benefit from attacking the blockchain that can be achieved by attacking the blockchain, say via a 51% attack, and that can be reaped as a reward, and that is kind of that's the carrot that might motivate an attack. But
it's not. It's not real. You're saying?
Well,
I agree.
I
agree with that.
It's impractical.
Yeah,
it's impractical.
That is extra protection. I guess what you're saying is there's no reason to fear that because it's unlikely. But we could separate the likelihood of that failure case from the total impact of that theoretical failure case. And I agree with you. Even it's even more protected than what you're saying, because while I agree with what you're saying, that actually extracting a monetary value from a 51% attack is let's say overstated. You know, the amount of benefit you could ever gain, even if you could do exactly what you wanted, even if you could steal everyone's balances, which you can't do with a 51% attack. If you could steal everyone's balance in Bitcoin and cash 100% of that out into US dollars, you know, even if you could do that, the maximum benefit would be for 5 billion, right? Across the board. You took Satoshi's, you took everyone's Bitcoin, and you cashed it all out somehow. Now, that is obviously a theoretical maximum. There's no way you get anywhere near it, because the minute you start doing that, you know, even the best case is a total market crash, and what you can pull out of that is a very tiny fraction. Because once everyone recognizes that you're doing this, then the price crashes, and you can't get much of it out anyway. The last of that $500 billion will never come out, because who's going to sell it for $1 when you've stolen 4.9999 billion already? It's not going to happen. So there's many problems with that. However, mathematically, what you're saying is that the upper bound of the negative consequences is way lower than 5 billion, and I agree 100%. But it's certainly no higher. We know for sure, without even looking at any detail, that it can't possibly be any higher than that.
See, I think that's where an error is being made, and it's more that as we try to quantify the security of these systems by looking at by gauging incentive versus expense of an attack. You know, I mean, that's a classic way of looking at how these things are secured. We actually need to look beyond the incentive structures that are built to secure the network and look to external motivations that may not be considered by the protocol.
Yeah.
For example, as soon as you're dealing with identity, there's a whole bunch of hidden incentives to damage a system like that, especially from areas where people see this. I mean, we all see this kind of panopticon forming around us, and people people despise that, and especially the
Yeah.
idea of reducing a person to a number, to a digital identity. I think that that's a really controversial thing to do.
Yeah.
And I know that we actually had in New Zealand a terror attack where they were digitizing the police records in the 70s, I believe, where a guy packed his mini, so the story goes, full of explosives and rammed the police facility where they were doing it. I mean,
Where they were doing the
heard
digitizing.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
he was against it. And so he thought exploding the stuff was the solution.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, of course, I mean, what other course of action would you do if you're a deranged, if you're a deranged farmer? But I'm not with that guy. That's crazy. I'm not going to say I've got any common ground with some violent explosion stuff. However, I think what your point is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that people feel real fear and a resistance against the sort of 1984 Brave New World. Everyone is reduced to a number, and they're all in a database, and they're all under the thumb. They've got a boot on their face. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with them. Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. But what I'm saying is, I think that this digital identity stuff is the way out of that, because. But
I think the culture of our age, it's kind of it's that it's the perspective.
Yeah.
That it's about where you sit in the in kind of the timeline, and this hasn't filtered down to a lot of the world, and they see this kind of thing as the absolute nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
This isn't, they don't fit into that Mark Zuckerberg just put on a brave face and let's plow on through.
No, I'm with all those people. I think that here's the way I see it. The tools of oppression are the same as the tools of liberation. They're the same tools. Okay, so actually what you need to do here is level up. You need to become technically literate here, because the only possible outcome for not being so is like not being language literate or numerate or some other thing, not having an education to deal with the problems that you're seeing. Anyone can see that there is a potential danger from technology and from the control and direction of technology and science and all of these things, engineering, progress, the whole direction of human capability in these technical specialities is a concern for everybody, even people who don't have those specialities. But I think what I advocate is first literacy in, or at least some familiarity with those concepts. You can't protect against the techno apocalypse unless you at least know. I want to stay away from that guy in the Mini with the explosives. But you cannot, you can't solve the problem through ignorance. That's the first step, and the second step is the sort of identity systems. And I guess now I really don't want to use that term identity system because it doesn't communicate the concept that I have in my mind. But name registration or alias registration or whatever you want to, think like domain name registration, is that a oppressive tool? No, it's not. It enables you to create name spaces where you can put stuff so that people know what it is and it doesn't get confused with other stuff that it's not. This is actually, away from that, because the problem isn't that there is an identity system on Facebook or on Google. The problem is that Google and Facebook are not under our control. Our account isn't really under our control there. We don't choose what information is disclosed to whom. If we disclose it once to anyone, we probably in this modern world need to, unless we have specific cryptographic controls, we have to assume that that's public. And that's the way I approach my online life and have since I was online in 1991. Anything from me that goes onto Facebook, even though I haven't befriended the world, and I may have some kind of, privacy settings in Facebook that stop people from seeing pictures of my kids or whatever. Anything that I put online in any form, I consider to be public. I've got two modes, public and private. Private is not online, or it's in some way highly cryptographically controlled, like, the password manager and stuff like that, or it's public, and I think that's the approach we need. People complain about Facebook destroying privacy. Well, there's nothing on Facebook that you didn't tell them about you. What you're doing when you're sharing your photos with your family on Facebook is you're also sharing them with Facebook. And then you're entrusting Facebook to do the right thing. And they just don't have the incentive to do that because you're not paying them to do that. Their customers are advertisers and you're the product. So you're got to recognize that your control of your private stuff or stuff that you don't want to be shared is something that you need to be tackling actively. And I think that we need a system to do that. And that system shouldn't be owned by single corporations. And that's the sort of system I've been describing.
A couple of notes on the conversation. The Whanganui Computer Centre digitised and amalgamated the records of the New Zealand Police, Land Transport Safety Authority and the Justice Department. In 1982, the 22-year-old self-described punk anarchist Neil Roberts exploded a backpack of gelignite at the gates to the facility. I shouldn't really have made fun of that. The BitShares distributed DNS and ID platforms have now been integrated into the BitShares platform itself. The DNS auction system was to be conducted in shares and pays a small portion of the proceeds to the next highest bidder. The rest is destroyed, distributing the value to the shareholders. Thanks again for listening. Content by myself and Chris Mountford. Music by Cesis. Mixing and mastering by Richard Toth. For the Let's Talk Bitcoin listeners, today's magic word is zombie. That's ZOMBIE. Contact me at beyondbitcoinshow@gmail.com.